Check this. Okay, here we go. That should have done it. Did that work? Are we okay now? Okay. Don't ask me why. It just started working, correct? Somebody give me a thumbs up somewhere. Okay? Because we'll have to. This occasionally happens. This is one of those things where, yeah, fixed it. Good, 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 good. Welcome to the Wells Report. Hi, I'm John David Wells. We give you the news. We give you analysis for fact. We give you commentary and debate, and occasionally we give you sound. Yeah, I guess the Chinese kung fu movie version of the show started this particular podcast. We got that fixed, and now we can get started. So what I was telling you is that earlier this weekend, all weekend long, I was at the Great Texas Balloon Race, but that's not the only thing that happened in Texas. The Republican Party of Texas met this weekend. And one of the interesting things that they did was they passed a resolution that rejects President Joe Biden as the winner of the 2020 election, further aligning the state party establishment with former President Donald Trump and pushing false election claims. Now, that's CNN's. That's what CNN says. Okay, let me give it to you again. This is CNN copy. As a matter of fact, it was written by Shandelis Duster, who says, the Republican Party of Texas, or who reports, the Republican Party of Texas over the weekend adopted a resolution at the state convention rejecting President Joe Biden as the winner of the 2020 election, further aligning the state party establishment with former President Donald Trump in pushing false election claims. Okay. Well, that's what they call, yeah, and we'll talk about that coming up a little bit later on. Mike and we pointed out something else very important happened at the Republican Party of Texas convention. Here's what the convention said regarding the 2020 election. Quote, we reject the certified results of the 2020 presidential election, and we hold that acting President Joseph Robinette Biden Jr. was not legitimately elected by the people of the United States. We strongly urge all Republicans to work to ensure election integrity and to show up to vote in November 2022. Bring your friends and family, volunteer at your local Republican establishment, and overwhelm any possible fraud. Unquote. I'm talking to the Republicans. I'm talking to the Republicans now. I'm not talking to Democrats. We know how you feel. I want to talk to Republicans. Does that resolution speak for you? Telephone number is 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. The Republican Party of Texas over the weekend adopted a resolution rejecting the 2020, the results, the presidential election of 2022, rejecting those results, saying that they believe that President Biden was not legitimately elected by the people of the United States. Does that resolution speak for you? 817-379-2172. Before the final resolution was adopted, Brian Bodine, a platform committee member who said he wrote the resolution, proposed an amendment about the January 6th, 2021 attacks on the U.S. Capitol. It asserted the rights of those charged with crimes have been violated, rejected the narrative that events at the U.S. Capitol represented an insurrection. The proposal drew applause and "Let's go Brandon" chants. Matt Rinaldi, the chairman of the committee, ruled the amendment was not out of order, ruled the amendment was out of order and would not be considered. The platform also included a section calling homosexuality an abnormal lifestyle choice and opposing all efforts to validate transgender identity. The state's party platform has not been finalized. James Wesolak, a spokesperson for the Texas GOP, told CNN, but the votes are being tallied on each individual plank. Also during the convention, Texas Senator John Cornyn, a lead negotiator on bipartisan gun talks, received boos from his home state crowd after he said he had fought and kept President Biden's gun-grabbing wish list off the table. Democrats pushed for an assault weapons ban. I said no. They tried to get a 3-week mandatory waiting period for all gun purchases. I said no. Universal background checks, magazine bans, licensing requirements. The list goes on, and I said no, 1,000 times no. So you might ask, what's on the table? More mental health resources, more support for our schools, making sure that violent criminals and the mentally ill cannot buy a firearm. That primarily means enforcing current law. That's what I've heard from many of you here today and this week, and that's what we're working on. Nothing more, nothing less. The party also unanimously adopted a resolution by voice vote, rejecting the bipartisan gun agreement and rebuking Cornyn and the other GOP negotiators, including Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina, Susan Collins of Maine, Bill Cassidy of Louisiana, Mitt Romney of Utah, Pat Toomey of Pennsylvania, Tom Tillis of North Carolina, Rob Portman of Ohio, and Roy Blunt of Missouri. Roy Blunt, by the way, is retiring. This, by the way, doubles down on something that I have been saying. There's only one thing more dangerous in Washington, D.C. than a politician, and that's a lame duck politician. Okay? So let's talk again. Let's start at the beginning. The Republican Party of Texas adopted a resolution that rejected President Joe Biden as the winner of the 2020 election. Does that resolution speak on behalf of you? I'm asking the Republicans. Does that speak on behalf of you? Now, the chairman, Matt Rinaldi, ruled that the plank was out of order and would not be considered. So where does it stand? I don't know. But what I want to know is, does that speak for you? Yes or no, and why? 817-379-2172. Does it speak for me? Let me give you the answer. I am not sure about the 2020 election. I'm not sure. That's because nothing was ever actually investigated. Now, this is a wonderful mess that we've gotten ourselves into. Actually, we didn't get ourselves into it. The actual body politic of the United States, the people that actually believe they're the government incorrectly, talk about a false claim. But these people have decided that they are the government. And what they did was this. They rejected all actual investigations into questions regarding the 2020 election based on state decisions by state courts. That is the circumstance. So, those state courts ruled that the people that were questioning the results of their particular states were out of order. Some states did a forensic examination of the ballots. But if there was any flimflammery going on in the 2020 election, it was before the ballots were cast in toto. In other words, it was before the ballots were cast. Okay, so that's how that whole thing came down. What they did is they counted, if there were fraudulent ballots, all they did was gather all the ballots and count them again. Which, by the way, in some cases showed no difference. Well, that's because the fraudulent ballots were already baked in the cake. What they should have done is they should have gone back further, one more step, to determine just whether or not there were indeed fraudulent ballots cast and counted. Before they went back and said, yeah, we counted them all right. Except they didn't. That's what I believe. And then anybody who brings up anything having to do with the 2020 election and disagreeing with the results are immediately stomped on by the press and ridiculed and all of that. Now, that's what I'm thinking. So, was the 2020 election legitimate? The answer isn't no. The answer isn't yes. The answer is we don't know. And that we have not gone through to double check and make sure, and then lay this out once and for all, means two things. What does it mean? What are those two things? You stick around and I'll tell you coming up in just a couple of moments. Greetings, my name is John David Wells. This is the Wells Report. We do this every single day. We give you essentially 3 podcasts 3 separate podcasts that you can listen to at your leisure. We record them from the Fort Wells Keller Studios in beautiful North Fort Worth, Texas, and we'll be back with more coming up in just a moment. You stay right there. You are listening to the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. The Texas Republican Party went ahead and voted on a plank that is not finished for their platform for the 2022 election that said they reject that President Joe Biden was the winner of the 2020 election. further aligning the state party establishment with former President Donald Trump regarding the 2020 election. It's not just Donald Trump. There are a bunch of people asking questions about the 2020 election. And they should, because a lot of the questions have not been answered. They have not been answered on purpose. And it is dangerous, and it is awful. And we should discuss it. We have a chat room that you can get to. All you got to do is go to your streaming service, and they come from different places, from YouTube, from Twitter, from Twitch, and so on. So let's go through some of these things. All right. So what I'm asking, by the way, is does that resolution speak for you? Do you believe the 2020 election was illegitimate? Yes or no, and why? I believe that there are too many. We don't know. I believe we do not know. There is no yes answer, there is no answer. Okay, we did not. There was no investigation into any of these claims. No real investigation. Now there are a lot of people that used a lot of terms that make people say, "Oh yeah, there was a forensic audit." Yes, of the ballots already counted. But we don't know what happened in that election. And it starts with many of the voting machines used, because we don't know how the voting machines work, because it's a trade secret. Oh, really? In other words, we're voting on machines we don't know how they work. Right. No. Sorry. So there is a problem. So one person says the 2020 election was extremely suspect. I agree. Another says, legit or not, he is the president. There's nothing to turn it around due to fraud. Impeach for one reason or another and convict or confirm in the Senate. That would be one way of doing it. But then there's another problem with that. Then we deal with the devil we know. The fact the vote count was tampered with, I think, is a given. Can it be proved that Trump actually won? No. There are too many changes in how votes were collected and counted over to ever straighten out the mess. And the results will never be officially invalidated. Okay. It's meaningless because they don't know the details of the other 49 elections. Well, the other 49 elections weren't actually in play. There were 5 swing states. The entire election hinged on 5 swing states. And there was flimflammery. There was. And so now what we have is this. We have a circumstance where I'm asking whether or not that resolution speaks for you. I have been consistent in this. I don't know. I don't know what's going on. And then neither does anybody else. And like I said, it starts with the voting machines. But I'll tell you what this does mean. It means that the people of the United States will have their say. And the people of the United States will have their vote as long as the persons that they vote for are either members of the Democrat or Republican Party. They are creatures of the party apparatus. The Republicans didn't want Donald Trump reelected any more than the Democrats did, which tells you that the entire process is now suspect. These are things we must keep in mind because there are further elections, and we have to do something about these elections. We have to make sure that votes are counted properly. And that means that all the votes that are available on election day get counted. Anything that shows up afterwards, no go. No go. There's more. Stay where you are. You're listening to The Wells Report. Back with more coming up in just a moment. You are listening to the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. So there is a thing that goes out there whenever Democrats discuss what may be differing political viewpoints, especially where Donald Trump is concerned, and especially where the 2020 election is concerned. And that is that the immediate reflexive response is that this is an attack on our democracy. And a lot of people make this point that the United States is not a democracy. It is a democratic republic, okay? Which is not to be confused with the Democrat Party, which is a completely different thing. I want to fix a couple of things here. First of all, when someone disagrees with the Democrat Party, it is not an attack on democracy. It is an attack on democracy, which is different. You see, Democrats, for whatever reason, believe that everything that they believe is absolutely correct, whether it's constitutional, whether it's law-abiding, whether it has anything to do with anything or not. That's the Democrat Party we find here today. Obviously, there are an awful lot of people that do believe in law and order. There are an awful lot of people that do believe in political dissent. There are an awful lot of people that do believe that hypocrisy is a major problem in American politics. And those are all things that are part and parcel of the current Democrat Party. They are hypocritical. There are double standards. And that is something that the Democrat Party has got to confront. And failing them confronting it, we must confront it. We must confront them with it. Hypocrisy invalidates virtually all Democrat policymaking. And it is rampant. Squashing a political adversarial debate. That's just plain unconstitutional. Among other things the Democrat Party is absolutely committed to. It's absolutely ridiculous. And this fascist idea that somehow you can be shamed into complying with this is unacceptable. It's unacceptable at any level. We must confront this as a threat against not democracy and not even democracy, but indeed the United States. There is a Constitution. There is a Bill of Rights. There is a rule of law. There are all manners of things that protect us from overbearing government oppression and tyranny. And all of us have to stand up for that. Every single one of us. We have to stand up for it without fail, consistently. The 2020 election, Texas GOP looking in the rearview mirror. But the points for the 2022 election and the 2024 election are essential. There can be no voting machines where the process to actually count the votes is secret. That has to stop. There can be no votes counted after Election Day. That also has to stop. Those are the two things that are required in upcoming elections. There are actually more. Only registered voters should be allowed to vote. And they should have to present a picture ID that proves that they are who they say they are. That's what must happen. And we have to fight for all those things. Because if you want to actually discuss, and once again, one of the infuriating things about the Democrat Party is that they will accuse others of what they themselves are doing. They will accuse others of what they themselves are doing. So if they're accusing somebody of if they're accusing somebody of a coup, it's because they've been caught trying to actually perpetuate one, which happened during the Trump administration. And so in this particular case, what they say is all this is an attack on democracy. It is not. It is an attack on democracy. What they believe is not the be-all, end-all. And we must have adversarial interactions. We must have adversarial interactions to be able to arrive somewhere in a circumstance that makes sense constitutionally and legally. We have to do these things. It is essential. It is essential that we do this. Now, the Texas GOP stepping up and saying, yep, we don't believe it. Well, that's their opinion. It's one that I can't say one way or another, because there has not been a reasonable amount of investigation in any of these hanging issues. And what also goes with all of this is the fact that the people of the United States elected Donald Trump, and the political process began to sabotage his presidency 19 minutes after he actually swore the oath of office, when somebody was first talking about impeachment. The sabotage continued on the part of both parties. Both parties. My fellow Trump voters, I have to admit that we have a golden opportunity, the likes of which we may never see again. Because what we have here is we have a two-party monopoly on political power. And it's time that we have a political party to represent the Constitution of the United States instead of a collection of conservative-leaning politicians and liberal-leaning politicians. That's what we have to have. I think it should be called the Conservative Party of, I think we should call it the Conservative Party of Texas to start with, and then the Conservative Party of the United States. And I think we should start that forthwith. We have 74 million reasons why that would be successful. And those are the people that voted for Donald Trump in the 2020 election. More votes than any other sitting president running for re-election ever. Ever. And clearly, the Republican Party did their best to sabotage Donald Trump. And clearly, the Democrat Party did their best to sabotage Donald Trump. The only thing bipartisan in Washington, D.C. that everybody can gather around is that Donald Trump is an existential threat to politics as usual in Washington, D.C., with two parties lording over political power. Claiming bipartisanship is somehow good, when bipartisanship is most assuredly not good. It insulates the ruling class from the people. And we had better stop it. Josh Beam, I'm sorry, Josh, I got your name wrong. Josh Beam says, in my state, the vote is oppressed by the state of Iowa. You either have to be a registered Republican or a registered Democrat to vote. Until stupid stuff like this ends, we'll always have a two-party monopoly. Correct. But look, this is simple. Everybody says the people of the United States are divided. Well, what brings them together? The Constitution of the United States brings them together, and the Bill of Rights. That's what brings us together. What I'm interested in is, how can anyone look at the meanderings of the Republican Party and look at the meanderings of the Democrat Party and think the Constitution is being served? A document every single one of them swears allegiance to. and then does their absolute best to contravene. Where am I getting this wrong? 817-379-2172. Where am I getting this wrong? The answer is I'm not getting this wrong. These people are working to undermine the Constitution of the United States every single day. And it's all that protects us from this government. That's all there is. 4 pages of Constitution. A page, the Bill of Rights. 5 pages. Keeps the federal government from just deciding what they're going to do with us next. All the while demanding our money and our support, our allegiance, and stomping on anybody who dares disagree. And it's getting worse, not better. It's getting worse, not better. So we find ourselves in this position where, once again, it all comes down to GOP politics. What do? They facilitate Democrat politics. What do? Well, they got just about a whole bunch of people convinced that boys can be girls by choice. And girls can be boys by choice. And if they choose, if these young children, and they're children until what? Till they're 18? Is that where we are here? They're children until they're 18. So they can't do certain things until they're 18, but they can decide whether they're boys or girls before then when they're children. The reason that we wait until they're 18 is because their thought processes aren't complete. Their thought processes are not complete. Why are we allowing them to make decisions about their own sexuality? As if we actually were. The same geniuses that decided that there were thousands, 10,000, hundreds of thousands of little boys who were bored snotless in school were somehow hyperactive. Those diagnoses were not made by doctors. Those diagnoses were made by teachers. Teachers were making those diagnoses. Just like teachers deciding, well, little Billy really wants to be little Barbara. Where's their training? They don't have any. They don't have any at all. They're just making a decision. Then they're fighting tooth and nail to throw some little kid into gender dysphoria for the sake of politics. That's the current Democrat Party. Where am I getting this wrong? Where am I getting this wrong? I only hear Democrats talking about it. It's monstrous. Republicans, where's the fight? At least, whether you agree with the Texas GOP or not about the 2020 election, whether you agree with them or not, at least they're saying something. The Republican Party sits there and goes, oh my gosh, murmur, grave looks. Oh, yeah, no, we can't allow that. Yeah. Jube Dankworth. Teachers diagnosed ADD, ADHD, dyslexia, all manner of things. Now they're they're diagnosing gender dysphoria. Whoa. Why? Why are they doing that? There is a name for that in the United States Code. The laws of the United States, there's a name for it. It's called malpractice. It's called practicing medicine without a license. And this cause celeb comes through. Oh, yeah, okay. So we have a teacher that says teachers don't make diagnoses. The counselors and parents make those decisions, special education intake, meds, and services. Sure they do. Sure they do. That's not the way it happened for my son. I'm just saying. Just in case you want to know. No, and the reason why, was it really because Johnny was just a moron, or just because Johnny was just plainly hyperactive? Was that what it was? No. No, you see, the teachers were making those diagnoses because, well, they were in a position where if little Johnny was indeed hyperactive or determined to be hyperactive by these knowing educators, not psychologists, not doctors, but actually just educators, then the federal government would pay per student the people that were suffering from ADHD and ADD. Yeah, it was a money grab. It's another reason why the government doesn't need to be involved in the schools at all. All kinds of problems, and they're all political. Back with more in a moment. This is the Wells Report. You are listening to the Wells Report. John David Wells, thank you very much for doing so. Elsewhere in politics, President Biden is deciding whether or not there's going to be a gas tax holiday. That's not the only thing he has to decide. He also is thinking about this. I found this very interesting. He is considering lifting Trump-era tariffs to slow down inflation. Yeah. Lifting Trump-era tariffs is one of the few things President Joe Biden could do to slow inflation, this according to CNN. But that doesn't mean Americans would immediately notice a drop in prices. So far, President Biden has resisted pressure from the many in American business community to lift the tariffs his predecessor imposed on $350 billion of Chinese goods. bicycles, baseball caps, sneakers during a tit-for-tat trade war. But as inflation continues to be a thorn in the president's side, the bane of our existence, as he recently put it, he said his administration is considering lifting the tariffs, which, by the way, would then put more pressure on American businesses, which would then experience a slowdown in their production, which means that there would be fewer American workers, which means that the upcoming recession will be even deeper. And that's because the president doesn't know anything. And anybody running the presidency, whoever those people are, they don't know anything about economics at all. It's painful to watch. By the way, on the gas tax holiday. So the president says, well, at this particular moment, the federal gas tax is somewhere around 18 cents a gallon. Mike Renwee says it's 18.4 cents per gallon. Okay? This is another wonderful way for government to screw up economics. What happens when the federal government takes 18 cents a gallon off the price of gas? Okay, one, gasoline is still over $5 a gallon. That's thing number one. What's the second thing that happens? That's right. Gas retailers raise their prices 18 cents. They'd be stupid not to. Okay? 18 cents. At the risk of totally screwing up my world, I am now going to attempt to do some math. Okay? Now, I realize I've been warned off of this time and time again. And the reason I've been warned off of it is because, well, it's tragic. So let's say your car has 20 gallons. 20 gallons times 0.18 equals, okay, $3.60. That's $3.60. So the gas retailers get this windfall from the President of the United States who says, by golly, there's going to be a gas tax holiday, 18.4 cents, gone. And the gas retailers raise the price per gallon 18 cents. And you say, well, I'm not going to pay that. That's the same price it was last week. I'm going somewhere else. For $3.60, you're going to go someplace else? That's the difference. $3.16 a gallon. Now, so we had gas in the $2 range at the beginning of the Biden administration. So let's see, we'll go back to that same 20-gallon gas tank, okay? And we'll say, multiply that by, let's just say $5. $5 divided by 250. Okay? That equals $40 a gallon, or $40 a tank full. So you're spending, so the gas tax, 18 cents a gallon. Reasonable, intelligent energy policy in the United States of America saves you $40 a gas tank per tank of fuel. $3.60 or $40 a tank full. Which makes more sense? Well, obviously, what makes more sense is the fact that the Biden administration turning off petroleum, fossil fuels, pipelines, refusing to admit that nobody is going to leave all that oil and natural gas and coal underneath the grounds of the people of the grounds of the United States of America. Nobody's just going to leave that sitting there. Nobody. Look, if you want green energy, make it better than fossil fuel energy. Until that happens, green energy is a myth. It is a myth. And that's the reality of it. I know that reality vexes an awful lot of politicians who keep trying to tell a completely different story. We'd better get a hold of these politicians, right? We better. You're listening to the Wells Report. Thanks very much for doing so. We're going to be here for another couple of hours. We've got another broadcast, another hour after this, and then one third one coming up later on today. So make sure you grab it. Make sure you pass these things around. Make sure you tell your friends about the Wells Report. Pass the word. News, analysis, commentary, debate. Give us a buzz. Let us know what you're thinking. 817-379-2172. Back with more in a moment. How's it going? North to south, coast to coast, around the world. This is the Wells Report. Greetings. My name is John David Wells. We bring you the news. We bring you analysis for fact. We bring you commentary. And yes, we bring you debate. Debate, by the way, is the check and balance, very much like the Constitution of the United States. The check and balance for what I say. Because commentary is my opinion. Valuable to those people who agree, not necessarily valuable to people who disagree. If you disagree, share your disagreement. 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. Join us on the Wells Report. You can also find a chat room. It's vibrant. It's filled with people who make all kinds of wonderful commentary. And we will get that to you as I can. 5 major U.S. cities are currently on pace to break their homicide totals from last year. It's not gun violence. It's gun crime. Gun crime. Major cities are currently on pace to break their homicide totals from last year. What cities are they? Los Angeles, Washington, D.C., Baltimore, Milwaukee, Atlanta. They are all on pace to outpace their marks from 2021, and it's only halfway through the year. Milwaukee sees the largest spike of the group, according to crime data reviewed by Fox News. Wisconsin's largest city has recorded 96 homicides as of June 17th, compared to 77 at this time a year ago. The numbers continue a trend that has plagued the country since 2020. Homicides in the U.S. increased nearly 30% compared to 2019. The trend continued last year, with the Council on Criminal Justice Statistics showing homicides across the country in 2021 increasing by 5% over 2020. The nation's capital has been another marker for this trend. 93 homicides as of June 17th compared to 82 at this point a year ago, a 13.4% increase. Atlanta's increasing crime rate came in just behind Washington, D.C., with homicides of June 11th coming in at 68 compared to 60. Baltimore, 7.7% is up 7.7%. Los Angeles, 7.3%. Gun crime, homicides. Now, that doesn't include those people that were just wounded in gunfights. Those are just homicides. Now, we find ourselves in a position where the Washingtonites are trying to come up with some way of doing something so that they can go back to their constituents and say, we're doing something. Unfortunately, that isn't necessarily something that I believe is the federal government's business in the first place, especially since the Second Amendment makes it absolutely crystal clear that Americans have the right to keep and bear arms, a right that shall not be infringed. Gun law infringes on those rights. Infringement on those rights creates crime. It has always been thus. And now we have reality slapping people in the face in all the cities that absolutely demand that we do something about the Second Amendment, up to and including changing the rules of the Senate to be able to just throw laws anywhere we want. Well, that's what elections are for, John David. Yeah, okay, that's what elections are for. Do you have confidence in the election process? I'm not saying yes or no. I'm just asking. Do you have confidence in the election process? An election process where 165 million registered voters were on the books as of the 2020 election. Over 200 million voted. Pretty impressive. Especially when you start thinking about the fact that based on the 165,000 actual registered voters, that would be a 95% turnout in the 2020 election. So do you have confidence in the election process? I do not. So yes, I'm asking the question, and no, I don't. And I think that because of the 2020 election, we're going to see more of it because it worked. It worked. Did it not? There are things that can't be explained. Any efforts to explain them are met with brick walls of a political nature. And once again, tell me I'm wrong. Tell me where I'm getting this wrong. 817-379-2172. I'm not getting it wrong. I'm not. I'm simply not. A major Second Amendment case, with all of this undergirding this, a Second Amendment case pending at the Supreme Court is energizing a debate about how far cities and states can go to ban guns in sensitive places. Bars, hospitals, sports stadiums. The question is not up for consideration. Experts predict it will be soon. The Supreme Court is set to decide whether New York may demand that residents demonstrate proper cause to carry a handgun. In other words, you've got to demonstrate it to who? Who do you have to demonstrate proper cause to? The people that are currently failing to keep you from being a victim of gun crime? They can't even call it gun crime. They can't even not even actually differentiate the term. They say gun violence. It's gun violence. My God, it's gun violence. Yeah, well, it's gun crime. It's not gun violence. It's gun crime. And the people that are charged with protecting us from crime are the people that are going to decide whether you have proper cause to carry a handgun. And what are they going to say? Well, that's not proper cause. Yeah, you're fine. Don't worry about it. And these sensitive areas, that impresses me too. Well, should we ban weapons in sensitive areas? Bars, hospitals, sports stadiums. Okay, how does banning guns in sensitive places like schools work? Not well, does it? So once again, a creation of a problem leads to creation of law to prevent a problem that was created by the people that are now creating laws to prevent the problem. That tells you something about the people creating laws. Sensitive places. Adam Winkler, a UCLA School of Law professor. Oh, good. A professor who's probably never lived in the real world. He's lived in academia his whole life. He got out of college with a shiny degree. He went to graduate school, got another shiny degree. And with his 2 shiny degrees, he got himself a job teaching in the academy. Completely insulated from reality. Sensitive places, the next major Second Amendment battleground. States like New York and California that currently restrict concealed carry pretty severely are not going to throw up their hands and surrender. Surrender from what? What are they going to surrender to? I mean, who are they surrendering to? They're surrendering to criminals amongst them. Gun crime. Who commits gun crime? All these shootings that are going on around the country. Most of them are perpetrated by people who already fall under gun law that does not work. The only gun laws that work are among law-abiding persons. The people that we have a problem with are non-law-abiding persons. That's why we call them criminals. Sensitive places. The High Court's decision and the fallout from it will land as the nation once again grapples with a series of mass shootings, including one at an elementary school in Uvalde, Texas, thanks to President Biden, a school that you couldn't get within 200 feet of with a firearm without breaking the law. How's it working? That shooting, by the way, is now prompting bipartisan momentum in Congress for gun control legislation. We might hear about that today. What we need to do is we need to actually solve the problem instead of using the problem to infringe on the Second Amendment of the Constitution, slowly whittling away at the processes that keep us safe from a totalitarian government. And once again, we know that totalitarianism follows a disarmed populace. Australia, England, New Zealand, perfect examples. Democrat-led states and major cities like New York are attempting more sweeping policies in response to the ruling that has not been made yet, but this is what we call preemptive, quote, journalism, unquote, from USA Today. Sensitive areas, huh? 5 major cities on pace to break their homicide totals. That's not that doesn't include the people just being shot. Doesn't include the people that have had a gun pressed into their forehead and said, "Give me what I want from you." Burglaries, armed robberies. That's just homicides. So should guns be banned from sensitive areas? No. No, they shouldn't be. Or you can look at it this way. Wherever you want the next stand-up blowaway to happen, make that a sensitive area. You want bars to be the site of a gunfight? Make it a sensitive area. Same thing with stadiums, everything else. Render people completely defenseless, and someone will come in there to take advantage of it. Mistake. About that Senate bill. Fox News reports a bipartisan group of Senate negotiators, in other words, the ruling class, may release the text of their bill today. Apparently, the Fox is reporting a deal was struck earlier this month on gun-related legislation after negotiations began to pick up steam in recent days. Senators worked on the text of the bill. Talks had been stuck on the details of how to close the so-called boyfriend loophole and how to fund state implementation of crisis intervention orders known as red flag laws. NBC News first reported that a text could be released today, though talks that seemed to be gaining steam did not result in a bill before the weekend. Senators are hoping to have something passed before the July 4 recess. It's not clear that they'll be able to do so with just a handful of days left before they are set to leave town. Meanwhile, many senators are saying, what does the bill say? Well, nobody wants to tell them anything. The bipartisan group of senators haven't told anybody anything. Senator John Cornyn of Texas and Senator Chris Murphy of Connecticut are the lead negotiators. Cornyn said there were still disagreements among senators. I'll bet. The boyfriend loophole is part of federal law that allows court-adjudicated domestic abusers to buy guns if they were not married to their partner. That's a loophole? You're listening to the Wells Report. Back with more coming up in just a moment. You are listening to the Wells Report. I am John David Wells. Talking about this gun crime issue in the United States. It's not gun violence, it's gun crime. Shootings dutifully reported by all major news networks with the specific idea in mind of infringing on the Second Amendment. Let me give you an example of another set of circumstances here. Business Insider, Guns Down America, used the gun violence archive to track gun incidents. Now you have to take these stats with a grain of salt, because what's a gun incident? Okay. There were a total of 448 incidents and 137 deaths across 12 large national retailers since January 1st, 2020 to May 14th, 2022, about a year and a half. 137 deaths is the most solid of those. 137 deaths. Now listen to this. A legally armed woman in Des Moines, Iowa, in a grocery store, shot another woman who violently attacked her yesterday morning. This was something spontaneous that unfortunately happened in that grocery store where a lot of people were grocery shopping in the morning, said Sergeant Paul Pizarnik of the Des Moines Police Department. Police say suspect Capri LaShawn Francis attacked a woman without provocation inside a Hy-Vee grocery store at 10 a.m. local time. The unidentified woman was legally armed and fired one shot at Francis. She was shot in the leg. A male customer got shot in the foot. The bullet ricocheted. Francis was arrested and charged with assault causing bodily injury after receiving medical attention at a local hospital. Police said the victim fired her weapon in self-defense after interviewing witnesses and reviewing store surveillance footage. A business owner who works next to the grocery store described a chaotic scene. I decided to come over to the corner. I was like, "What's going on?" said Michelle Boyum, the owner of Sunseekers Tanning. One of the employees was down here crying. She ran to me. It was like she was there. There was a shooting. I immediately grabbed her because she's maybe like 17 years old. A lot of staff and customers said they witnessed it. A couple of them said that they had seen the gunshot go off. They'd seen the person where they got shot at. They were shaken so bad that all I could do was to be there and hold them, unquote. 137 people in the last year and a half shot in grocery stores. Is that a sensitive area? I mean, is a sensitive area a place where people have used weapons before? So grocery stores. Yeah, what this is an infringement on the Second Amendment. This woman believed her life was at risk because some woman started beating her up in a grocery store. What happens if she doesn't have a weapon? What happens then? Well, she gets the crap kicked out of her is probably what happens. That's what happens. And so what do we want? I mean, what do we want? Do we want people to be defenseless in these, quote, sensitive areas? What we want to do is we want to make sure that people like this, who take a shot at an attacker when it's unprovoked, and when it's in a situation where they believe their life is at risk, those people should be lauded and magnified. They've done good work for the society. Word should get around. Don't attack somebody in a grocery store because you're likely to get shot. And so what we want to do is we want to make it possible to have a soft target for any crazed gunman that just happens to have a weapon. Is that what we're looking for? That's what this bipartisan bill does, except, of course, there are at least a provision or two in there. There are provisions where schools would be safer. They should be completely safe. Why isn't that in that bill? This is the Wells Report. You are listening to the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Hello. Thank you for being here today. While we're talking about people who should be lauded and magnified for their responsible use of handguns and weapons in general, a Texas gun owner defended himself and a woman from a teenager who allegedly tried to rob them at gunpoint in Austin, Texas last week. Jalen Reed has been charged with aggravated robbery with a deadly weapon. He's 17 years old. Jalen has already been convicted of a series of robberies in 2021. Police say he was released from juvenile detention May 27th with an ankle monitor, which he cut off 2 days later. Then Reed committed a series of 9 robberies in 5 days. Reed reportedly approached the man and woman shortly after exiting his vehicle, which police say contained 3 other suspects. Surveillance video recorded Reed as he exited the vehicle, approached a male victim and a female victim. Reed pulled out a handgun, robbed the male victim of his backpack. At the same time, other suspects in the car moved forward and waited for Reed. Reed moved toward the getaway car while pointing his handgun at the female victim. The male victim then pulled out his firearm, fired several shots at Reed and those in the Chevy Malibu in self-defense. The male victim struck Reed in the leg. Police located Reed and other suspects shortly afterward, applied a tourniquet to Reed's leg before he was taken to the hospital. Authorities recovered a number of stolen items at the scene. Police have released photos of Reed and his accomplices, Andre Harris, Paul Rossum, both 18 years of age. The 4th suspect was a minor. Gee, I wonder if they're going to make sure that he doesn't get a bolt cutter from one of his friends to take off his ankle monitor when he's released. All 9 robberies that happened recently were committed similarly during the daytime, said the APD, the Austin Police Department. One suspect would exit the vehicle, enter a busy business area. The other suspects inside the car would identify potential targets. Once a person is identified, the suspects approach them, point a handgun, demand their belongings. In several cases, the victims suffered head injuries after being pistol whipped. These are guys that have already got a record. The photographs they released were not photographs taken at the scene. They were mugshots. So what we need to do is make it harder to carry weapons around and defend yourself? Is that what we're talking about here? We want to make that tougher. Is that right? The answer is no. We don't want to make that tougher. In media, ABC News is at it again. And this time it's coming in the ways of an ABC News poll. As a matter of fact, ABC News Ipsos. Almost 6 out of 10 Americans want former President Donald Trump criminally charged in connection with the Capitol riot on January 6th, 2021. The poll found that 58% of Americans say President Trump should face criminal charges for the role he played in the riot, a higher percentage than in late April when 52% in an ABC News Washington Post poll said that President Trump should face charges. By party, the poll found that 91% of Democrats say the former president should be criminally charged, compared with 19% of Republicans. Illinois Representative Adam Kinzinger, one of 2 supposed Republicans on the House Select Committee investigating the riot, said on ABC News this week, Trump is guilty of knowing what he did leading up to the attack. Obviously, you know we're not a criminal charges committee, so I want to be careful in specifically using that language. Then he goes on to use that language. What the committee is presenting before the American people certainly would rise to a level of criminal involvement by the president and definitely a failure of the oath. Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, Maxine Waters. How many others? How many others are guilty under this specification, according to the great Adam Kinzinger? How many others? You remember that hypocrisy thing I was talking about? Remember that? What about Joe Biden and Kamala Harris? Offering to bail out anyone arrested for miscreancy during the supposed peaceful social justice riots of the summer of 2020. Should they be going to jail as well? The 27 Democrats who voted against protecting against Supreme Court justices and their families, obviously lobbing a soft curveball up to anybody that wants to make a name for themselves by assassinating an associate justice. Well, you have to assassinate the right associate justice. If you assassinate the wrong associate justice, well, then you're done. But, it was a peaceful shooting. It was a peaceful assassination attempt as long as someone with different politics is the person getting shot. Is that the way that works, Democrat Party? Is that where we are now? Is that what we can think about for the future? That's why we have to fix all this. That's why we have to fix all this. And so, do you agree with this poll? Do you agree with the poll? 58% want to see President Trump, including 91% of Democrats. I want to know, of the 91% of Democrats, I want to know how many of those people believe that the people who egged on the BLM riots, I wonder how many of them should also be charged. According to Democrats, I want to see that. Because if it's what I suspect would happen, I suspect that probably maybe 10, 12, 15% of Democrats who believe that President Trump ought to be charged would say, no, those people shouldn't be charged. Oh, really? Really? In point of fact, what this means is that ABC News is biased. The ABC News Ipsos poll is nothing more than propaganda. That's what it means. And it doesn't really make any difference what they're talking about. This is just the latest example of how terrible ABC News Ipsos polling is. The polls are essentially disinformation articles. And that's all they are. What does this mean? This means the mainstream media, led by ABC News, is simply working toward a totalitarian future for our nation. What else can it mean? By the way, just because I say it doesn't mean it's some nugget that you have to immediately press to your bosom as if it's absolute reality. If you disagree, tell me. Tell me. 817-379-2172. Call me on the phone. Explain to me why it is that all those politicians in all those liberal cities that were burning to the ground in the summer of 2022, after the Democrat Party not only sent out the thugs, but also said, hey, we'll bail you out of jail. And, and on top of all that, what about all those people that say that the police were the problem? Not the criminals, but the police. The police were all bigoted. They were all terrible. They were all awful. How about all those people that said that supported defund the police? And we saw a dramatic rise in the number of police officers getting shot. All those politicians ought to be charged as well, right? Correct? And so, where does this go? I'm waiting. I'm waiting for someone in the Democrat Party to explain to me why it is that this is not just plain outrageous. I'm trying to wait for someone to explain to me why a biased media that is nothing more than a stenography service for the leftist, progressive, socialist, anti-American, fascist movement should still be on the air. Why in heaven's name would any right-thinking American, when I say right-thinking, I mean constitutionally thinking American, why would they have anything to do with any of these news organizations that obviously put garbage out like this? Smug Democrats are sitting there saying, yeah, that dang Trump, boy, that guy, boy, he sent all those people out there to riot. Yeah? Uh-huh. Right? How many people were killed in the Capitol riot? None? Well, one rioter. One especially mean-looking U.S. Air Force veteran was shot in the face by, it was really funny. Yeah, that's morphed into being shot in the neck. She wasn't shot in the neck. She was shot in the face. She was dead before she hit the floor. But they don't want to say that. The video shows it. The guy walks right up to her, puts his gun in her face, and shoots. Why? What deadly force was she exhibiting? And the reason I bring that up, of course, is because, well, somebody breaks into your car and so on and so forth, and the owner of the car in the home comes out and shoots the guy in the driveway. Suddenly he's in trouble with the law because robbing a car shouldn't be a death sentence. Oh, really? Is that your argument? Well, you can't have it both ways. If robbing a car is not supposed to be a death sentence, then trying to move through a doorway without a weapon in hand and plainly evident should also not be a death sentence. No, but they gave the guy a Congressional Gold Medal. There you go. That's a great thing. So I'm still waiting for some learned Democrat to come up and say, well, of course Trump should be criminally charged. Okay. What about all the other inflammatory, overheated, ridiculous rhetoric? Not that President Trump used any of it. He said to go peacefully protest, which is exactly what happened with BLM. Peaceful lootings, peaceful arson, peaceful robberies, peaceful murders in the street, peaceful beatings of women with 2x4s, peaceful burning down of federal office buildings, peaceful attempts to lock a bunch of police officers in a firebombed police station. All that's peaceful. But I'll tell you what, you go into the Capitol building when the Democrats are finishing up what is a suspicious election. You go in there and you just disagree. Somebody's getting shot in the face. That's the way it works. Is that essentially it? I just want to hear the justification. I want to hear the justification. I want to hear the explanation. I want to hear about equal protection under the law. I want to hear about all of that, not from Republicans. I want to hear that from Democrats. I want to hear it. I want to hear an actual honest-to-goodness explanation. I want the President of the United States and the Vice President of the United States to justify charging President Trump with criminal charges for January 6th while they are watching the cities of America burn down, police officers blinded with lasers, actual federal buildings actually being burned, and then saying, by golly, we're going to bail those guys out. What I want to see is how you can justify Donald Trump being charged, but not Joe Biden and Kamala Harris being charged. So don't just sit there. Don't just sit there on your silence because I nailed you to the wall with reality. Call me on the telephone. Start spewing some of that garbage. I want to hear the garbage that you want to throw at my feet. 817-379-2172. Can hardly wait. What's the difference? The difference is that, well, the Democrats were egging on all the violence during the BLM riots, and a Republican, according to the latest propaganda du jour, was egging on protesters. All I heard him say was, just make your voices heard. Peacefully protest. That's what I heard. Well, but the committee put all this video up there. My God, the president looks terrible. Right? What was edited out of all those videos? What was edited out of all of those messages? What is missing? Well, shoot, I don't know. That's right. You don't know. So once again, please, by all means, explain it to me. I gots to know. Explain why it's okay to throw a Republican former president of the United States in jail for doing something that Chuck Schumer did, for doing something Nancy Pelosi did, for something that Maxine Waters has done. All these people. I mean, we're going to start throwing people in jail. We're going to do it fairly, right? I mean, that's the bipartisan thing to do, right? Silence. Well, you know, sometimes not saying anything at all is really, really informative. You're listening to The Wells Report. Back with more in a moment. Stay right there. You are listening and watching The Wells Report. This is a 3-part podcast. We have 3 podcasts we do every single day. This is hour number 2. And what I want you to do is hit like, and I want you to hit share, and I want you to hit the bell, so that whenever we pop up, you are reminded to pop up with us. Let's get together. This is where you can have that discussion that you can't have anywhere else. You actually are invited to disagree with the host. Not disrespectfully, by the way. Respectfully, if you're an obnoxious troller, that's how you can be escorted off the property. Absolutely true. Okay, just so you know, people have said, "Well, I thought you said," yeah. Well, that's when you're on the chat room, say for example, and every third chat is yours. That's called trolling. Okay, make your point and then and then you've made your point. Okay. If you troll and if you essentially try to run things off the road, well, then we'll simply ask you to leave the property. Leave us in peace, in fact. But the telephone, that's kind of different. The telephone is a little different. You can call us anytime you choose, 379. It's actually 817-379-2172. Econoclast, counterculturist, free spirit, individualist, lone wolf, maverick, nonconformist. Elon Musk, iconoclast. Fun to watch what Elon does. It's really fun to watch him do what he does. You know, Americans ought to be in space. I think I'll send people in space. I think I'll develop the technology to be able to do all that stuff. We can do that. Let's do it. And he does it. Everybody in the world is making regular cars. Let's make electric ones. Everybody is finding themselves where big tech is telling them what they can think and what they can say and so on and so forth. Let's fix that. And he's putting 44. How much is it? I mean, how much money is he putting up there to get that? Is it $44 billion? $44 billion. He's putting $44 billion on his belief that people ought to be able to communicate without interference. Which is why I was kind of surprised when he said, I wonder if TikTok is destroying civilization. Actually, in point of fact, it's not TikTok that's destroying the civilization. What's destroying the civilization is the dancing on TikTok. Oh my. I mean, I had American Bandstand. I had Soul Train. I'm Don Cornelius. TikTok dancing is, oh my. He tweeted on Friday, is TikTok destroying civilization? Some people think so, or perhaps it's just social media in general. The billionaire tweet came minutes after he responded, to a report that Chinese employees at ByteDance, which is the TikTok parent company, had repeatedly accessed private data from the platform's users in the United States. Gee, yeah, I wonder just exactly who they were accessing. I found out that a bunch of my classified paperwork ended up in China's grasp. That was nice. I'm sitting there going, well, that's awfully nice. I'm glad they know all that stuff. That's wonderful. TikTok has faced heavy scrutiny from U.S. politicians for its Chinese roots. How come it hasn't faced heavy scrutiny from the FBI? Oh, that's right. They're busy working. They're busy working to try to throw people that disagree into jail. All right. I'm sorry. I forgot what the secret police actually do. Former President Donald Trump signed an executive order in 2020 threatening to ban the app from the U.S., but President Joe Biden prevented the ban from taking effect soon after taking office. Doesn't want to offend the Chinese. A TikTok spokesman did not immediately return Fox Business's request for comment. This is their story. Musk, who entered an agreement in April to acquire Twitter for $44 billion, reportedly told the social media giant staff at an all-hands meeting last Thursday that while he does find some TikTok videos to be offensive, the platform does a great job of making sure you're not bored. I mean, it does feel like ADD, but like next level. Musk emphasized that TikTok's app has honed the algorithm to be as engaging as possible and that he wants Twitter to be just as engaging, but in a different way. TikTok is interesting, but you want to be informed about serious issues as well. I hope he's successful. What I also hope is that big tech finally decides that they need to be constitutionally compliant. If they are the new American bulletin board, they've got to make sure that everybody has thumbtacks and space on the bulletin board. They have to. That should be part of what they do for all that they do. That should be part of all of it. Everybody doing business in the United States as a corporation needs to be compliant with the Constitution of the United States, don't you think? I sure do. It's nice to know that there are guys, iconoclasts even, that believe the same thing. Good on you, Elon Musk. TikTok destroying civilization. I'm telling you, it's the dancing on TikTok. The actual movement on TikTok. You've been listening to the Wells Report. You've been watching it too. Thanks very much for doing both or either. Make sure you tell everybody that there's a radio show that actually, or excuse me, a podcast that actually talks about real stuff with real people. We'd sure love to have them join us. Back with more coming up in just a couple of moments as we get you through the Monday after the weekend. It's Juneteenth. That's next. So Juneteenth, huh? Okay. North to south, coast to coast, around the world. This is the Wells Report. Hi, I'm John David Wells. You are whoever you are. And I'm glad you're here. Thanks for joining us. We bring you news. We bring you analysis. We bring you commentary. We bring you debate. Actually, we share debate with you. And we invite you to do so. 817-379-2172. Phone will ring right there, and I will answer it. The wonders of technology can bring you, by the way, the country code is +1. Okay, so it would actually be 1-817-379-2172. So if you are in France or Germany or Great Britain or any of those other places, by all means, join us if you choose to. We'd love to hear from you. Here in the United States, we have federal holidays. This is one. It is a new federal holiday. Juneteenth, National Independence Day. It's actually June 19th, but we like to extend our holidays an extra day on the weekends. It commemorates the day. Listen carefully to this. June 19th commemorates the day that U.S. General Gordon Granger arrived in Galveston, Texas, June 19th, 1865. 1865, 89 years after the Declaration of Independence, and shared the news that the Emancipation Proclamation had been passed 2 years earlier. The Civil War had ended 2 months before June 1865. Last year, Juneteenth became the nation's 12th federal holiday. It was a 415-14 vote in the House of Representatives. President Biden signed the bill into law June 17th, 2021. As of recently, the day is colloquially known as Juneteenth, a contracted word that combines the month of June with the number 19. Federal acknowledgement happened 2 days before Juneteenth's 156th anniversary. For 156 years, we have finally acknowledged that that was a great day in American history. Not just a great day in American history, but a great day in world history as well. The number of holidays like Juneteenth, I don't believe there are any others around the world. Why? Because this country committed to a slave-free nation 156 years ago. 156 years ago. One of these days, maybe we'll have a federal holiday commemorating the end of racism in the United States. I don't know that that's going to happen because people are hard to convince. Oh, not all of them. I mean, most of us think that racism is archaic, primitive, stupid, counterproductive, a waste of time. Because it is all those things. What's new, and that's kind of in the new millennium, is the exploitation of racism as a political tool. Maybe that's the federal holiday that we should have. The eradication of racism being used as a tool, as opposed to racism being a crime against humanity, which is what I believe. But Juneteenth is a shining federal holiday in the United States of America that celebrates the governmental end of slavery in these United States. Observers of Juneteenth pay tribute to the day with parades, festivals, speaking engagements. This year, for the first time, U.S. stock markets will be closed today. Federal workers get a paid day off for Juneteenth. When General Granger shared the news in Texas about the Emancipation Proclamation, slaves in the remaining rebel states were unaware that President Abraham Lincoln had issued the 1863 proclamation. The slave trade remained in effect after Confederate General Robert E. Lee's surrender to the Union's Ulysses S. Grant in Virginia, April 9, 1865, and Lincoln's death on April 15, 1865. Approximately 250,000 slaves were freed in Texas following the Army announcement. It's not known why the news of the emancipation did not reach all 34 states that made up the warring nation. Theories about what could have led to the delayed announcement have circulated for more than a century. That it took 2 years is unfortunate. It's sad. But keep something in mind. It doesn't take 2 years for word to go from one end of the country to the other now. It takes about 2 seconds. That's a good thing. The Library of Congress names 3 theories that have been discussed among historians and Juneteenth observers. They include the chance the messenger carrying the Emancipation Proclamation announcement to Texas may have been killed mid-journey. Slave owners might have deliberately withheld the news. Federal troops might have held off on enforcing the proclamation until slave owners were in a position to harvest their final cotton crop through slave labor. Despite the uncertainty about the delay, freed slaves went on to commemorate the day in Texas and throughout the United States. In Texas, I am told that Texas created June 19th as a holiday in 1979. Early observances acknowledged June 19th as Emancipation Day, Jubilee Day, Freedom Day, Black Independence Day. Observers of the day state that the annual acknowledgement of this point in history serves as a reminder that while slavery was not abolished with the Emancipation Proclamation, it was formally abolished through the nation's 13th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, ratified December 6, 1865. That took place 6 months after Juneteenth. But why not Juneteenth? Why not celebrate it? It's a triumph. Triumph for all Americans. A triumph for all Americans that is being submerged in political abuse of racism. Racism is a tool. USA Today said a water slide in Florida, a fashion show in North Carolina, balloon animals in Arizona, parades across the country. Some of the Juneteenth celebration scenes documented by USA Today Network as many Americans gathered on Sunday to observe Black freedom. Juneteenth commemorates the official end of slavery in the U.S., when enslaved people in Galveston, Texas learned of their freedom. The inaugural commemoration of it was 1866, officially recognized as a federal holiday 2021. Also known as Juneteenth National Independence Day, the holiday speaks to the broad hope, yet frustration of the historic, structural, and modern-day injustices toward Black people. Richard Cooper, coordinator of the African American Studies curriculum at Widener University, told the Tennessean. Well, that's unfortunate. That's unfortunate. You see, what's also tied to this are the words social justice. What's tied to social justice? Burning buildings, riots in the streets, police officers being lased in the eyes, fires in federal court buildings, restaurants being burned to the ground, washing machines being carried off toward parking lots. To what end? Who knows? That's what social justice is all about. And social justice, that term, and the realities of that term is beneath the triumph of Juneteenth. It's just beneath it. Exploiting racism. I'm not sure which is worse, and maybe I should just ask you. I think I will. Which is worse? Slavery, racism, or the exploitation of slavery and racism? Which is worse? Hard to tell. Certainly, slavery, racism, crimes against humanity, exploitation of racism is simply destructive. So I'm obvious. It's obvious that slavery and racism are worse, but the idea that people never guilty of either slavery or racism are continually tarred by it, continually stained by it, continually accused of it, which is more damaging. They say misery loves company. Maybe that's it. There's another point that has to be made. Does June 19th actually mean anything? It by God should. Juneteenth should mean a lot, especially since no other nation on the planet has ever done anything about it. Nobody's ever done any of this. It's not a national holiday to rid themselves of slavery. There are plenty of countries right this very moment, as we sit here and have this conversation, there are plenty of countries that still trade in human beings. And you don't have to go far. Slavery is known as another name, human trafficking. That happens every day on the border that I just left. Every single day. Human trafficking, human smuggling. It's illegal in the United States as a matter of official policy and official law. It's a part of our Constitution. But what does the 13th Amendment mean as well? 13th Amendment, amendment to the Constitution. What does that mean, actually? In the current climate of people accusing their neighbors of racism, nothing. Let me give you another example. This degenerates into politics, but I'm going to go ahead and do that. And I'm going to say that the president of the United States at the time was Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation. He was a Republican. But as we come to this conversation, well, who are the de facto racists in the United States? That's right, Republicans. Why? Well, because the Democrat Party can't live with its past, that's why. That misery loves company thing? Accuse your enemy of what you're guilty of? See, I want Juneteenth to mean something. I want it to be a celebration of casting off a ridiculous and primitive practice that subjugates human beings to property. This should be a bigger day than it is, not a smaller one. And it's not just because slaves were freed. It's because this nation freed itself of slavery. This is the Wells Report. You're listening and watching The Wells Report. I'm John David Wells. It's a privilege to be here with you. Thanks very much for sharing your time. We've been talking about Juneteenth. And we've been talking about the United States of America creating a holiday to commemorate a great achievement, which was the eradication of slavery in this nation. Why is it that nobody gets credit for it? Why is it that nobody realizes what an amazing national triumph the eradication of slavery in the United States is? In 1776, Thomas Jefferson wrote the Declaration of Independence. There's not a racist word in it. I've seen the original document. Do you know that the original, at least the one in the National Archives, I think the original document went to King George, but the one in the National Archives has a strike through it, a typo. May have been the only mistake that Thomas Jefferson ever made. It's an amazing thing. But we had a document that started this nation that didn't mention race. The Constitution of the United States amended in 1865 to rid slavery from this nation once and for all. That was 156 years ago. Well, why is it that nobody gets credit for that? Why is it? The continued exploitation of slavery in the first place and the accompanying racism, the continued exploitation politically of that is what we deal with now. There was real racism. I lived with it in the United States of America. I lived with it. I watched it on television. I was 10 years old in 1968. My blood ran cold seeing what was happening in our nation. The 1968 Democrat National Convention says everything you need to know. Read up about the Compton and Watts and Detroit and Chicago and New York riots. There was real racism here. And we finally figured out a way how to get together in the 70s when I came of age. The 80s was prosperous and joyous and wonderful, and a lot of people moved past ridiculous things. National prosperity is perhaps one of the greatest one of the greatest salves for national wounds. And yet we have political factions that work to destroy prosperity, to create those people who feel less than, and use them as a monument, a political created monument to at once enrage the diminished and blame those they say diminished those people in the first place. The media does its part to portray itself as a champion of trying to get rid of racism, but in the actual exploitation of racism, all they do is make it worse. There's a story I'm going to share with you here in just a couple of minutes about a media personality complaining about the poor treatment of someone that she supports. The poor treatment. It's just awful. I'm going to share that with you coming up in just a couple of moments. Juneteenth. It's a great holiday. It matters. Celebrate it today. Seriously. By golly, let's figure out a way to celebrate it better next year. What do you say? This is the Wells Report. This is the Wells Report. Thanks for joining us. You know, I was musing during the break there, and I realized that there is a way for all of us, every single human being in the United States, there's a way for all of us to take part in the brilliance of the unencumbrance of humanity in these United States. You ready? What we should do next Juneteenth, and I think what we should do is we should try to get a movement started. Okay? We should free things that are encumbered. We should free things. We should release flocks of birds. We should release balloons into the air. We should rid ourselves of restrictive underclothing. We should stop encumbering ourselves in every possible way. We can celebrate Juneteenth the best possible way by ridding ourselves of restrictive underwear. It just came to me. It was like, and I really want to know what you think. Okay? How about this? In order to celebrate Juneteenth, anything, yeah, restrictive underwear, Yvonne. Yeah, bras and underwear. Yes, exactly, Alicia. Alicia's got it. Harkening back to the heady days, well, that's a bad choice of words, the enthusiastic days of the women's liberation movement. Okay? What we should do is everyone should rid themselves of restrictive underwear. Men, commando. Because every time you move, yeah, baby, exactly. Every time you move, you'll be reminded of Juneteenth. See, this is something that all creeds, all colors, every possible demographic group in the United States can celebrate Juneteenth. Men going commando and women going braless. What do you think? Freedom, baby. One of us just said, you know what? I'm going to be home. I'm almost home. I will celebrate Juneteenth. Right. You know what I'm thinking of? I'm thinking that I'm going to. Oh, wait, I'm on television now, aren't I? See, when I was some body type should not go commando. Well, that's their problem. They should see their urologist. Just saying. Anyway, I just realized that now I'm on video. So, I mean, if I was doing radio, I would probably follow my own advice right now. I just drop trowel in the studio, get rid of those tighty whities. I don't wear tighty whities, actually. I wear Brazilian trunks, and they're restrictive. You know, there was a reason why I started. I can't deal with boxers. It's the wrinkles, the wadding up of fabric. It just doesn't work for me. Okay? Huh? TMI. 3 Mile. Oh, TMI. Too much information. Okay, whatever. But you see, I can't do that now because I'm on video. So what I'm going to do this. I'm going to get off this. I'm going to end this hour of this podcast, and I'm going to go down and I'm going to drop trowel and I'm going to unencumber myself. I think you should too. Everyone. Huh? No? Let's see. Somebody saying TMI, John David. Burn the bras when I was 20, maybe, but not now. Facepalm. Why? Why? Why not? They're all beautiful. Come on. They're all beautiful. Just grab one of those old halter tops. You know, the ones you had back in the day. Just put one of those on. Because every time you move, you'll be reminded of freedom on a very basic. Now, that was too much information. That That was too much information. Yeah. Something having to do with the eradication of thongs at a certain age level. I never understood thongs. Actually, I became an absolute anti-thong kind of guy when I danced with the Pittsburgh Ballet doing Casey at the Bat. They gave me a costume, and then one of the guys came over and said, "Okay, here's how you do it." What? He handed me the costume, and he handed me the leotards. And I went, "You're kidding, right?" He goes, "Nope." Okay. By the way, if you really want to work out, go to your kid's ballet class and actually do what they do. Just go right ahead. You won't believe it. I was actually invited to take part in the warm-ups and all that stuff, and I thought I was going to die. I really did. Now I know how the turkey bone feels at the end of Thanksgiving when you make a wish. All I can say, be ready. Take muscle relaxants and a leave. Okay? So anyway, what do you think? Just give me a real fast, everybody who's on the chat room, just say, give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Celebrate Juneteenth by wearing unencumbered clothing. In other words, unencumber yourself from restrictive underwear. I think that's a great idea. I actually, I thought it was just silly, but I actually think that's not a silly idea. Why not? Why not? I think that would be a wonderful thing. I mean, okay, I've got one thumb up so far, so that's one positive. If you're on the chat room right now, give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Okay, so we have two thumbs up and one thumbs down. Men go commando, women let the puppies breathe. Unencumber yourself for Juneteenth. I think that's wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. Man, I think that's a good idea. Actually, the more I think about it, the more I think it's a good idea. Somebody just buzzed me on my phone. Let's see. Sure. Yeah, exactly. Hang on, somebody else. I hope you don't get in trouble for the unencumbered stuff. It almost sounds like you're making fun of Juneteenth. I am not making fun of Juneteenth at all. I'm not diminishing it in any way, shape, or form. Listen to this podcast. Listen to what I just said about Juneteenth. Juneteenth is an essential and incredibly important holiday. Cleo Marchese says, okay, take your hair out of its bun. Release the kraken. Yeah. Why not? Let your hair hang down. Let's do that. I'm not making fun of Juneteenth, not in any way, shape, or form. I'm trying to actually figure out a way for all of us to be able to celebrate it in a real sense that actually makes sense. Human beings are precious. Human beings should be celebrated more than diminished. If I could figure out some way of figuring out a way to get the word to other people to, I know it's a Christian thing, and I know there are a lot of people who listen to this broadcast that aren't Christians, but what's wrong with the golden rule? What's wrong with celebrating other people to the point where you don't want to kill them or hurt them or rob them or damage them? Why not? Let's find a way to celebrate this day in a way that you are reminded that you're celebrating it with every move you make. I know it's kind of funky, but guess what? People are funky. It's okay. Everybody's got funk. Everybody does. And if you're doing it, you're in a position where you're going, the weirdness disappears in about 10 minutes. After that, it's pretty much everybody's everybody. And that's the point, isn't it? So let's see. I have most thumbs up. I have only one thumbs down so far. If you're on the chat room, give me a thumbs up or a thumb down regarding the celebration of Juneteenth by removing restrictive underwear. I know it sounds crazy right at the start, but the more I think of it, I'm going, gosh, that actually makes sense. That actually makes sense. On a human-to-human level, it makes sense. Well, let's move on. But if you're in the chat room and you haven't voted, get with it. Okay. Speaking of exploitation of racism, why is it that this show always goes toward underwear? It doesn't always go toward underwear. It doesn't. We're also talking about letting your hair down. Come on, why not? I mean, I know, Kelly, you wear that SEC ponytail. You know, the ones where it comes straight off the back of your head and sort of sticks out there? Yeah, that SEC ponytail. Yeah. I mean, think about it. I mean, come on. Look. If, as silly as it sounds, and I'm certainly not making fun of Juneteenth, because it's too important a holiday to make fun of. But let your hair down. Be yourself for a while. Just for a while. You know? I think there's more. And gosh, not only that, but think about how you're actually walking through life with people doing that. Okay? And you're looking at each other and you're saying, huh, I wonder if that guy's going commando. Yeah, he's going commando. It's the right thing to do. Unencumber ourselves, free ourselves from restriction. And boy, could we use a little bit more humor in our lives, couldn't we? Wouldn't that be a great way of doing it? A fun humanitarian gesture. A human moment. A human moment. Where on a physical level, you're just a little bit more honest. Just a little bit more natural. Just a little less willing to tie yourself down. An opportunity to celebrate humanity in a humorous and fun way. I'm really having trouble finding anything wrong with that. Okay, this time I'm moving on for sure. But somebody said, "Oh, John David, come on, man. You're making fun of Juneteenth." Not a bit. That's a national holiday we should all celebrate, because no other country in the world celebrates it. We, by God, should. By God, should. And if there's a little hearkening back to the Garden of Eden, that's okay with me too. So speaking of exploiting racism for political effect, MSNBC host Joy Reid is very annoyed with those people reporting on the Veepness of Vice President Kamala Harris. In an interview over the weekend, why do people keep asking her questions? Why do most states don't recognize Juneteenth? Of course they do. It's a national holiday. Anyway, Joy Reid sounded off over criticism of Vice President Kamala Harris in an interview over the weekend, saying she doesn't get a fair shake. She doesn't get a fair shake. Why? Why doesn't she get a fair shake? Well, because She wears restrictive underwear. No, I didn't say that. Is there a dumb button? Anybody got the dumb button? Did we get rid of that? Huh? No. By the way, I just realized a flaw in my logic there. Because if everybody celebrated Juneteenth by removing restrictive underwear, does that mean that Nancy Pelosi would be the first one? Oh. Okay, where was I before a little nausea? You're listening to the Wells Report. Back. You're listening and watching the Wells Report. Make sure you share this podcast. Well, maybe not this one. Nah, go ahead. What the hell? What's the worst thing can happen? Man. Anyway, what was I saying? Oh, yeah. Share the podcast. Light the bell so that when we hit the air or hit the internet, you know, and go. Okay? And hit like, would you please? Because we could sure use a lot of likes on this. If you like what we're doing here, make sure you share that with the people, the powers that be. So as I was saying, MSNBC host Joy Reid sounded off over criticism of Vice President Kamala Harris in an interview over the weekend, saying she did not get a fair shake because of the mostly, okay, here's the racist slam, white male media. In an interview with The Root, ROOT, don't know what that is, Reid claimed the press did not showcase the vice president's relatable personality. You think? Kamala Harris is like if your cousin became vice president of the United States. Right. She told the media outlet after comparing Harris to former First Lady Michelle Obama. Really? I think she doesn't get to show that personality often enough. Let Kamala be Kamala? Do we really want to do that? Especially since she might be the president of the United States imminently. Yeah, the reason that people have trouble with Kamala Harris is because people don't get a chance to know her. Reid said that Harris had the toughest issues to deal with aside from inflation and the war in the Ukraine before suggesting the vice president faced an unfair double standard. Most of the media is still white and male. This is Joy Reid speaking. Joy, I'm sorry, I didn't realize this. Do you now identify as white and male? Their take, and then of course she speaks for all of us, their take on Kamala Harris becomes the take. It becomes conventional wisdom. Reid implied that their shared race and gender allowed the pair to have a real conversation in a recent MSNBC interview. Of course, she's above all this. Right. A poll last fall showed that Harris' approval rating fell to a historically low 28% approval rating. That's because she won't stop talking. So much for letting Kamala be Kamala. Harris is the first Black and Asian American female in the top role. In a New York Times report, she allegedly told allies that, quote, news coverage of her would be different if she were any of her 48 predecessors, all of whom were white and male. Really? Other media outlets and figures have rushed to back up Harris's claims. In similar ways, the media parroted presidential candidate Hillary Clinton's complaints about sexist media coverage. Last December, Politico ran with unfounded claims from Democrats Vice President was a victim of a coordinated campaign by Hispanic radio stations to tarnish her image. No. That's not what tarnishes her image. She has the toughest issues to deal with, like the border. What has she done about it? Nothing. Zero. Zip. Bupkis. Late night comedy host. Is he really a comedian? Late night comedy host Jimmy Kimmel and the hosts of ABC's The View have also blamed racism and sexism. But conservatives have said that Vice President hasn't lived up to the demands of the job. Last year, Harris took 90 days to visit the southern border. 90 days. After being tasked to deal with a historic immigration crisis. Republican figures have mocked the vice president as perpetually unprepared. In her public remarks, she is perpetually unprepared. And that's not Kamala Harris's fault. Okay? Harris was recently faced criticism from conservatives for heading a newly launched task force to address online harassment and abuse. This after the Biden administration's similar disinformation board was dismantled because of outcry over free speech concerns. Well, obviously. Look, we have to stop creating outrage. We have to stop this divisive craziness. Joy Reid it's impossible for her to do anything less. That's all she has. That's all she has. It's everybody else's fault. Everybody else is unfair. Everybody else is rotten. Everybody else is this. Everybody else is that. And so Kamala Harris is a victim of all that? No, Kamala Harris is a victim of saying the wrong thing at really important moments and laughing at things that aren't funny and not being vice presidential, let alone presidential. That doesn't have anything to do with the people that are actually watching the show. That has to do with the candidate herself. How about this? Listen, Kamala Harris can't be that stupid. Kamala Harris needs to realize that she is not someone who is downtrodden or that she has to deal with unfairness. And by the way, Joy Reid, I have 2 words for you that you need to think of the next time you bring this kind of garbage up. Sarah Palin. Sarah Palin was savaged by the same media. And once again, where did I get that wrong? Just asking. Thanks very much for paying attention to the Wells Report today. Make sure you share this with your friends. Hit the bell. Hit a couple of likes. We sure would appreciate it. And go celebrate Juneteenth. You know, the way I told you to. Yeah, go ahead. See you tomorrow. All right. Peace, love, joy. Take good care. And I will see you tomorrow, just like I said, right here on most of this same whatever it is that you're watching.